Hey, welcome back to this short series, the short recording series of highlights from the INTx Unleashed program here at Personality Hacker. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we are releasing these short little recordings for two reasons. Number one, we want to give you a glimpse into the INTx program so you can make a decision whether you want to invest in it or not, if you're an INTP or an INTJ. We believe it's going to be very helpful for you. We believe fully in it. We've put a lot of work into it. We're really excited about it. But we want you to make that decision for yourself. So we're releasing these recordings so you can make the best decision possible. Reason number two, we want to give out actual content. We want to help you, regardless of your level of involvement or investment in the program. We want you to be able to take some things away for your life right away and implement them today.
Yeah, and no matter where you're at in your process, in your personal development journey, we have ensured that every level gets addressed in these interviews. So we use Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a template so you can self-diagnose where you're at in your process. So if you are all the way at the bottom in survival, we've got people who talk about that component, all the way up to self-actualization and ego transcendence. We talk about that too, and everything in between. So no matter where you're at in your process, there's going to be somebody who discusses the challenges they experienced there at that level and some of the strategies they used to overcome it. Now, we recognize that INTPs and INTJs have different mental wiring. We recognize that they have different cognitive functions, but some of the challenges they experience have some crossover. So if you're an INTP and you end up investing in this program, we recommend listening to the INTJ interviews and vice versa. If you're an INTJ, please listen to the INTP interviews. There's a lot of great stuff in all of them.
We did two interviews or highlights in these recordings of the two interviews we did where we illustrated some of the challenges you might have as an INTP or INTJ. And then we did two interview segments where we pulled out samples of some of the not working so well solutions that people tried. In this one, we're going to pull out some sample of an actual solution that does work, and we're going to play that for you.
Yeah, this is an excerpt from the interview with Patrycja, who is a very high-performing, in fact, I would almost say overachieving INTP woman. Now, she talks a bit about the flow state that she's able to get into, which increases attraction for other people. Now, this is not just attraction when it comes to sexual attraction, but it's actually attraction when it comes to people in general, because one of the pain points that a lot of INTPs and INTJs experience is some social awkwardness. So she talks a bit about getting into flow and one of the components that is required in order to stay there. So let's listen to this excerpt.
I do feel that there is a greater attractor than just having fun. And for me, having fun is being intellectual, and I do see people come in and appreciate that. So it's just, there's something about people being in the flow state, and we all get flow states in different ways. And so I did notice that, when I feel safe, first of all, I can only be in a flow state when I feel safe. And so that's why it's so fundamental to do this work on inner safety. And there's an entire meditation that I think I'm happy to share also that comes from, psychoanalysis and come from the kind of mindfulness practice around establishing the inner safety, which
Sure.
I think have been fundamental for me and many other people I actually used to work with as well.
So that was short but sweet and packed with a lot, although you might miss it on the first go around. What Patrycja is talking about is that people are attracted to other people who are having fun. And for her, being intellectual is fun. And then she likens it to a flow state. If you are in your flow state, you are very attractive to other people. And so in order to stay in a socially up phase, in order to get over social phobias and any fears she might have around that, she understands that her key is to be in flow, and being intellectual is flow. So she basically made a connection with this idea of like being intellectual as opposed to it being a detriment for her. Like she's the wallflower in the corner reading books. She said, well, you know what? I love being intellectual. I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to be in a flow state. And in that sense, I'll be able to be attractive to other people. However, there's one component as an INTP, and she mentions this a couple times in her interview. There's one component that's very important for staying in flow, and that is a sense of safety. She can't be in flow if she feels unsafe. But as opposed to believing the world around her needs to create a context of safety, she realized that she's going to have to bring safety with her. So she talks about, in the interview itself, she talks a lot about inner safety. She's the one who talks a lot about getting through the dark night of the soul and going through a lot of very dark times. And you'll understand based on her interview why she might have been in a place that is super dark based on, she's a doctorate of psychology. Of psychology. And she mentions that one of the first things that she studied was genocide, and it really impacted her. So she had to work through that, work through the absurdity of nature, work through all of the different elements that would come along with studying the darker sides of humanity. And she recognized that for her, if she was going to feel a sense of safety, especially being very in touch with all of those dark aspects, that she was going to have to generate it from within.
Yeah, and it's really great because she gives a specific meditation in the interview that you can actually implement in your life, which is fantastic. Because once that safety comes in, just because you feel safe and just because you want to create fun from your intellectual connection, especially as an INTP, it doesn't necessarily mean you have that tool set in order to do that. So we talk a lot about the actual techniques of how she gets into a fun up state, like up in her energies. She's able to connect with people on the intellectual level that matters to her. So she's not out of integrity with herself. She doesn't have to dumb herself down or anything. She gets to connect with people on high levels, and she gets to have fun doing it and create a sense of excitement and energy around it, which is really cool.
Yeah, in fact, she also mentions these and other components are the pathway to her femininity. Now, again, with Catherine, who we interviewed, or we showed a snippet of Catherine's interview a couple of recordings ago, she talks about the pathway to femininity as an INTJ, and then Patrycja talks about the pathway to femininity as an INTP. She also talks about how she got through existential crisis, again, a theme that comes up over and over again in these recordings and these interviews, how people have managed to deal with their existential crisis, which is something that is like pops up a lot for INTs. She also talks about how she transcended fear and how she avoids the INTP driver accuracy or introverted thinking, 10-year-old memory or introverted sensing loop. So there's like something called the INTP loop, which we discuss in the highlights of that interview. And she mentions how she avoids being caught in that loop. She also talks about her method with dealing with very socially awkward situations, and she actually gives a specific guide that she uses and she carries around in her pocket, and the ultimate social calibration as a woman INTP.
So we've talked about chaos around you. In the first recording here, we pulled an excerpt from Brent. We talked about the chaotic world around him, people making unreasonable choices. Then we went into another challenge that INTs have, which is this sense of doubt, especially INTPs, this doubting even the relationship. So if you haven't heard those, go back and listen to those recordings. Then we talked about some of the surface solutions. Catherine talked about taking on a role and her aha around, oh, wait a minute, I'm not my role. I can actually be different than what my role is. Oh, okay. Then we talked about Tom, this distinction between being right versus being connected, and how when he got rid of the idea of having to be right, he was able to connect with other people. And then in this interview we just heard here, the snippet, Patrycja talking about being attractive with flow, getting into flow to become attractive as a person. In the final recording here that we're going to go to next is with Christian Ramos, a friend of ours, high-performing INTP. He has unlocked, in incredible ways, actual tangible strategies for you as an INT to connect with other people in the world that I believe he's developed into a superpower at this point. And he's an INTP, he's an introvert. I can't wait for you to hear this next snippet for this next interview. Let's go ahead and go over to that next.